So I guess just to start us out, what is the current state of communities becoming DAOs? Basically, we're going to hear from the experts. Robert Scoble, basically an expert in the spatial web. He's been around, man. I think, Robert, we were together in China. What was it, like even like 7 years ago?
Yeah.
It's been a while. It's been actually, it's incredible to think like how, like you've had so many lifetimes, so many journeys to think about. We were talking about VR back then in China, and then the hardware, and it's so much to go over. But man, thank you so much for being a part of it. Natalia Dresek, yes, thank you so much. And Natalia Dresek, it's incredible what you guys are doing, all your partnerships, your announcements, the buzz. I know you have so much to share. Thank you so much for being a part of this. You have too many announcements. Same with Polygon. Marco, thank you. You guys are growing exponentially. It's going to be great to have you kind of define the DAO, Marco. I think it would be great to hear from you, even as the first initially, to define the DAO. And then Emmanuel, being an artist that's at the highest level of AAA gaming. Thank you, Emmanuel, for being a part of this to show your expertise from a designer point of view, from that gaming and DAO's point of view, as you've launched projects, and then you've come from the centralized and decentralized point of view. And then Leanne, being a co-founder and kind of the reason why all of this is where it is, Leanne Pham. So we're going to get right to it. We're going to go into it as we basically emailed. We don't have to be so strict. We can go in, and if you guys want to just jump in, each one of you, we'll try to keep the sound bites to 2 minutes or less for each answer. But initially, if we could just go over a DAO first, for everyone that doesn't understand what a DAO is. Marco, maybe you can summarize it for us, what a DAO is in simple terms for the kids.
Well, of course, and thank you, Joshua. Well, in order to make it very simple, a DAO, that is, stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization, is an organization. It's a human organization, meaning that we have people that are interacting, and it has something related to the blockchain. Could be related to the blockchain because there is a token, a fungible or non-fungible token, that it is used for governance or for membership. It is on the blockchain because maybe it could have a smart contract that is creating the organization, creating the coordination between the people. At the end, DAO, well, strict definition is impossible right now, because right now there are so many ways to define a DAO. There are so many use cases that we should have to describe each one of them. So a DAO, at the end, it's an organization that is based on the coordination of the people that are interacting, that are trying to govern something, to take decision together in a new possible bottom-up way, and they are sharing something. They are sharing maybe some, could be tokens, could be fungible and non-fungible token, but could be also ideas, and that could be shared on the blockchain. So at the end, we are talking about a new form of organization that could become a community, could become a company, could become a group of people, but at the end, the DAO could be also a family, could be anything where people are trying to find a new way to take decision together and to organize how they live and what they do.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much, Marco, for that. I appreciate that. And that will segue into our first discussion point. What is the current state of gaming communities becoming DAOs? So based on that beautiful articulation from Marco, Emmanuel, from your perspective as a AAA gamer and artist, designer, what does that look like from your perspective? Where is this current state of the gaming community and becoming DAOs?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can kind of, see how gamers kind of have impact on games already, just from like Twitter and Discord and that sort of thing. So I think it's like almost like a natural progression, as things kind of unfold. But one thing that I think, and it's kind of on topic, a little off topic, but that I think, can see really becoming DAOs or game studios as a whole within like structure and different teams, how they work together. I think that would be a really interesting use case for a DAO as well. But I think, gaming communities are naturally progressing that way, especially as, Discord is becoming much more popular for even, we had Discords for mainstream games, but now, everyone's really particular about growing their Discord communities and that sort of thing. So I think there's definitely a lot of value from the community side of things, but even like internal development and publishing, I think DAOs could be a huge value.
100%. And thank you so much for that. And Leanne, and maybe we'll go to Marco after this to hear what Polygon's doing in that side. Leanne, basically the convergence and the synergy between DAOs and gaming kind of lies at the heart of MetaHug and Play to Learn. Leanne, maybe you can talk about that convergence and what that means for the community and what we're doing for the kids, to what that means to play it forward and to gamify. As you can see, a leader will have a Web3 wallet in Roblox to be able to show how, and when you're gaming and the community can play it forward. So, the kid with cancer that wants the Air Jordans, the community collectively can make a DAO. And it's almost like, you're able to have that Make-A-Wish Foundation or a GoFundMe becomes its own small little DAO. It's basically for a purpose. It's like for a community. So I think that if you could go into a little bit more detail about what we're doing and that perspective.
Yeah. No, 100%. So for MetaHug, our mission is a DAO that's focused on Gen Z and Gen Alpha, which is around 25 and under. And the goal here is to support kids around the world, have limited resources. And we do that through mentorship and Web3 education. And so the purpose of our DAO it was designed to have these two generations to join the DAO, to actually learn Web3 by design. And so we set it up to where, everybody that's coming on is, in Roblox. I know that's centralized, but we're coming to them and bridging gaming and bridging education of Web3 inside a centralized part of like Roblox, just meeting the kids where they're at and teaching them the future of work, right? So that's, that lies in Gen Z and Gen Alpha. And so right now in our DAO, we created to where they are the one who are providing the creations of the games for the brands, or just for, in general in Roblox, what we're doing. And so we purposely set it up as a DAO so it's by design that they can learn Web3.
Perfect. And Marco, maybe you can touch on what you guys are doing from a DAO perspective, you being a central focus, Polygon being a major institution in the space. Just maybe touch on your side, what you guys are doing a lot in gaming and a lot in DAOs.
Well, first of all, I would like to say that DAOs are strictly related with education. This is very important because at the end we're talking about possible way to change how people interact, how they build with a bottom-up perspective. So there is, of course, there is a strict relationship right now between gaming and DAO. It is a very fragmented relationship because we have many different things that are going on, but we can identify some trends. From my point of view, while we are witnessing the growth of some pioneering companies in the field of Web3 gaming, most of the traditional gaming companies are interested in expanding in the crypto, in the DAO world, and so on, but are still very suspicious on a possible transfer of governance, because at the end it would mean for them to give away something that they are controlling 100% right now. So we see the development of many different hybrid experiences. Some of them are aimed to increase the level of involvement, participation of users with some Web3 dynamics. And we can see the introduction of some use of some models of monetary or non-monetary incentives, but generally they avoid to transfer real governance. There could be some sort of governance as deciding which could be the best way to implement a new level in the game, which could be, or even just for aesthetics, what could be the next color of the world and so on. So minor governance decisions that are aimed to increase the participation, the engagement, but we are not witnessing an expansion of the DAO space. There are, of course, some very interesting and pioneering experiences of DAO gaming guilds, but most of them are starting from the gaming guild themselves. They are not starting from the companies. So it's a very different way to where we see how everything is built.
Yes. Well, thank you, Marco. That very insightful. Thank you so much. Natalia, I would love to hear your perspective. I know that you did a partnership with Roblox in February. You're announcing some close. Your community in terms of gaming, you're gamifying a lot of your community. You have a lot of AR. Being able to interact with your community. How do you see DAOs in the future basically working with your community and your gaming and your product?
Thank you so much for the question. And actually, it's a very timely conversation, I would say, because just yesterday I was in San Francisco at Roblox Developers Conference, where there was a lot of builders of Roblox. And honestly, it was my first time there, and it's such a young audience there. And it's incredible how these people, like 19 years old, 18 years old, create their studios to build the games and to build experiences. And they start calling themselves studios, but sometimes they call themselves just teams, not even DAOs. And they kind of connect on this DAO kind of principles. However, they don't even use this terminology. Right. And another insight is that actually what I noticed that Roblox community doesn't really like NFTs and Web3. That's a way, I think, to go to kind of combine these things together. Right. And it's really interesting how it's going to be happening. And as for DressX, we really started our collaboration with Roblox earlier this year, when we introduced the first collection of wearables, because our goal at DressX is to make digital fashion available and wearable and inclusive. And we started from the use case of dressing up people for social media on their pictures, photos, and then in real time the stream videos in augmented reality inside a DressX mobile app that is available in iOS and in Android. And avatar dressing was the next step, because for younger generation, really Roblox is the place where their social connections are happening, not as much as traditional social media. And of course, your look and your image is important there, and this is how you express yourself. And this is really interesting how people kind of find this fashion, and it's really different aesthetics, and how traditional fashion can be combined in this aesthetics and can be translated into this new language. And that's exactly what we are doing in DressX. We help to translate this kind of traditional language of style into this new language of communication, which is happening in a digital format. And actually yesterday we launched the first collection that was not just internally developed by our team and based on our expertise, but we put all our experience in fashion and in digital to translate iconic pieces of Dundas collection, which is a luxury fashion brand, from red carpets, from fashion shows, from celebrities, that is actually hosting a big New York Fashion Week event today, and just yesterday released this collection together with us in Roblox. So that's really an interesting journey, how how all these worlds intersect, evolve, because I believe that the future is in the connection, intersection, and no matter which name tags we put on it, either it's a Teams or Daos or like Web3, the main is the human connection and what people build together.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. Thank you so much, Natalia. And Robert, understanding that perspective, I mean, you've been around and you understood the metaverse before the metaverse was called the metaverse, right? And you understood the spatial web. I love that you use this word spatial web, because I use that as well. And that I think we even used that word in China actually before, when we were talking about in Shanghai, when we were talking about the VR and everything. But you, from your perspective, because you are a journalist, I mean, you have tons of followers, you have people listening to you as a futurist, you from a gaming perspective. Say it again.
I wrote 4 books on technology.
Yeah, exactly. So you understanding the gaming community, understanding how to interact in that spatial web, how do you see DAOs interacting, like a group of let's say journalists, and you have like the who's who, the top 100 journalists, right, to write about spatial web? Do you see that in the future being a thing where the top 100 journalists talk about, together the spatial web? Do you see
Possibly.
that? Yeah.
That's a lot of disruption to happen in the future.
Yeah.
The way to collect yourself and build new organizations and get funding, which is really the hard part. I mean, I was last night I was hanging out with Jerry Ellsworth, who runs Tilt 5, a new augmented reality gaming company that's putting games on your coffee table with a new pair of glasses that she built. And getting funding is extremely hard, even for the best entrepreneurs. And she's like an amazing entrepreneur. This is a new way to build something like a virtual hoverboard company, which is one of the DAOs I follow. Yeah. And get funding, get users, get excitement, get people working together to get to the market. And so I'm pretty excited about it. I think the Web3 and this new way of organizing companies and people together still has to survive a little bit of Apple. Because Apple's coming out with a product next year that's going to be dramatically important to this community. And so this new headset that Apple's coming with will bring us into a true 3D gaming environment. And I don't think very few people are seeing that coming and see what that's going to do to this community and empower it. That leads into the future, right? So now we're talking about, okay, if Scoville's right that Apple is really important, are they going to sell 1.5 million units the first year? Okay. We're really talking about 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the road about the changes that I see coming, augmented reality changes.
And you talk about the funding, that goes into our next question, the roles of accelerators and incubators in gaming and DAOs. What does that support system look like? I mean, you're from Silicon Valley, you at the heart of it. I mean, it's like in New York City, it's like every night you can go and meet, like brush shoulders with different people around the world that we're targeting, that helping basically giving equal opportunity to. The new model, like India, Pakistan, Nigeria, wherever, we're trying to give them equal opportunity. How do we see this and this acceleration of that?
I think anybody who's building a DAO should look at Y Combinator and see why that became an important startup factory for Silicon Valley, right? And when you follow companies that go through Y Combinator, the major thing they do is force you to practice your pitch hundreds of times to really interesting people, and you keep hearing the feedback, right? And you take the feedback to make your product better. And then when you get to the demo day, you're talking to thousands of investors, right? That's really why you went through the program and give up 6% of your equity, is to have the ability to pitch thousands of investors all at one time. And you get 3 minutes on stage, but the value of that kind of system is to get your company buffed up and get your pitch so good and get your demo so good that you are rocking it when you get to speak to thousands of investors.
I love that. And Marco, I know that you guys have another discussion. Actually, you're a part of an accelerator, the Disney Accelerator, one of 6. And at a global scale, you guys, of course, don't need money, but you're a part of that for that feedback to be in that ecosystem, right? The Disney ecosystem. I mean, I think that that's really cool that there's going to be partnerships and collabs, like even these fashion brands, which Natalia, we can talk about later, the fashion brands, the collabs of brands you would have never thought doing a collab before, but they are doing collabs. And I think that's what the great thing about Web3 is, the collaboration. Before, maybe you would see as competitors, but now we're collaborating in that movement of collaboration. Just like Marco talking about Disney, what you guys are doing in general, that accelerator and incubator model. Maybe you could discuss a little bit of that, Marco.
Well, first of all, I don't have the experience and the knowledge of Robert to talk about it, and
I don't have any knowledge. I just know a lot of people.
And well, what we are talking about right now about accelerators and so on is something, of course, I know something about it, but it's not my direct. It's not my expertise. What I can share is my own perspective. I think that we are witnessing two kind of cooperation between incubators, accelerators, and Web3, and it really depends on the vision term of those accelerator incubators. So if we're talking about organizations that have a short, medium-term vision, well, they will always aim to maximize returns through marketing and community development, brand development, and so on. Building something that can be and could be immediately understood by both Web 2 and Web 3 communities. Those who are more interested on long-term, on a long-term vision, then they will always aim to develop an ecosystem, so infrastructures and public goods, so a place where others will be funded to build something that can be monetized in the future. And so we can see that there is this big difference right now. Some accelerator incubators that are actually funding projects that are building new games, new experience, and so on, and the others that right now are more focused on building infrastructures and so ecosystem that at the end could become the thriving place of new video games, new experiences, and so on.
Perfect. No, thank you so much, Marco, for that. Natalia, we'll get to you. There's so much of basically what we talked about earlier, the acceleration of collaboration in the fashion industry. Maybe you want to talk about that and how you see that crossing over in gaming and pushing forward.
Well, it's interesting how all the different worlds, including fashion, now looking into gaming world, seeking this new audience, and how engaged gaming community is, and everyone is really looking for this like engagement and trying to kind of create it. And actually, I would say this like social commerce was a big deal. And now like gaming commerce is becoming more important, and brands, corporations, capitals look at it more seriously. But what's important that there is always a creativity in the heart of it, and that everything should kind of happen naturally without kind of I don't know, conquering these communities, but really bringing the value to these communities first. And that's exactly how we try to approach it. And we partnered already with a lot of different kind of spaces, virtual spaces. Roblox was the first one in the beginning of this year. Now there's X collections also available inside the avatar shop of Meta and Horizon Worlds. We also partnered with Zepeto, which is another kind of avatar-based social media, and launched collection there exactly with their main Zepeter, as that's how this kind of population is called. Because really it's important to kind of speak the same language, and we see that not every platform is the same. And if, for example, Roblox is about this communication and self-expression, by all means, Zepeto is very much like fashion oriented, very cute, more like appealing to some female audience, versus like in Roblox is still more like guys there. And even at the conference yesterday, there was a lot of girls, but still guys were like dominating the space. And I think it's very important to make it more inclusive. And we believe that fashion is this visual language that is also more appealing to this female audience, and can make this digital space and tech space more inclusive and balanced.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's interesting. I watched the WWDC with the founder of Sync Reality. And after we watched it, he scanned my house, made a 3D map of my house, and then ran a fashion show in my house where the models were walking on the floor in my house.
Wow.
It's sick, right?
We're going to have to do something next time with Move AI. We're going to be doing, because this isn't in person, but when we have in person next event, we're actually going to be showing like us playing soccer in our soccer game in Roblox. So basically when we biohack, like, of course you have to hydrate. So you have a better soccer kick if you drink water, right? And eat your vitamin C. But we can actually, in our game, we can actually show us kicking the soccer ball. That's of course very basic. But to that point, Robert, it's exactly like that. Yours is much more advanced. But being able to just use an iPhone and capture you kicking the soccer ball in the real life, and then it actually reflecting in Roblox. So for all the kids out there, that's what's coming, and we're excited about it.
The point about diversity on your team is really important, and much more important than any time in the past, right? Yeah. When I started in computers were a box that you had on your desk that would hook up to your TV, back in the 70s. Today, we're wearing our computers. We're about to wear our computers on our hands and on our faces. Having a diverse team will help you get to understanding how to build things for the world.
Yeah. No, that's actually our third question is what are the roles of the phygital spatial web tools in gaming? Before we get to that third question, let's just finish the roles of acceleration and incubators. Actually, the VPX Foundation, MetaHug quarterly is going to be giving out grants, 25,000 to similar to Kiva and in Africa, what they do with micro loans, but these are, or any layer one blockchain, basically giving grants similar to Polygon and how they gave grants at one time. We're going to be giving to all of you listening out there, kids, as you listen throughout the year to this. We're going to be giving grants, and in a sense, like Robert said, the Y Combinator model, we're going to be tweaking that in the form of a DAO, but in a sense, we'll be supporting you just like Y Combinator does, and MetaHug supporting those creators with those grants in micro grants. So look out for that. We're going to move on to the next because we are running out of time. So Robert, segueing into, actually, I do want, before going on to the next one, Emmanuel, I did want to hear from you as a AAA gamer. You've created some of the biggest games in the world, right? So you, from your perspective in the gaming world, as an accelerator, incubator, that support system in creating those AAA games, what does that look like? What does that support system look like when you're creating this huge $100 million game?
Yeah, I think, in gaming as a whole, I think we're definitely at an interesting kind of time where traditionally, studios would, work with a publisher, get a publisher involved, and then that's how they would go to market. They'd get funds to build their game. Now you kind of have VCs that have a lot more interest in gaming and are kind of helping grow these, new startups and new ideas. And I think accelerators can help by, having access to resources that publishers might have had back in the day or before. So just having access to really good marketing agencies, design groups, and that sort of thing. But I think, in the future, I think especially as gaming, as startups grow in the gaming space, in the next decade or so, I think that there's going to be a huge need to help kind of these new companies, because they require so many resources. They require so many moving parts. Games are, a million moving parts in one. We have audio teams, cinematic teams, animation teams, art teams, engineering teams, graphic engineering teams. Now with Web3 kind of getting involved, you have economists, governance. You have all these new complex layers that are getting added on. And when we're looking at AR and spatial web and that sort of thing, that's a whole new layer of complexity, right? Because now you're looking at, well, how do we reach a really wide range, really wide audience? It's not just entertainment anymore when we're talking about AR. So I think, having access to those resources will be extremely important for startups. So I think accelerators in the space, just, bringing on experienced devs, bringing on people and that can expand that network. And that's where like accelerators can be a real value add to gaming startups. Because that's one thing I'm noticing. There's a ton of VCs right now getting involved in gaming, but they don't have necessarily the resources to really help a gaming startup. There's things that they can do, but it's a lot more than capital that games need, especially if you're starting out. So but yeah, so I think accelerators and incubators will become much more important as time kind of goes on. And there are great accelerators, incubators already in the space. I know in Finland and that sort of thing, there are some really good ones, but I think we'll definitely see more and more on the horizon.
Yeah, and go into this third, we'll stay with you, Emmanuel, then we'll go back to Robert. Basically, Dragos talked about basically the disparity gap between the US and, of course, the developing countries, what that looked like, the spatial web, tools, hardware, software, basically things to support the spatial web, GPUs, etc. What does that look like? Because I know there is that disparity of, do we have the money, etc. As things get cheaper, of course, things scale. What do you look like now? Of course, we're talking about the new products that we had from Amy. Amy Peck is on the board of a few, and she was giving us opportunities to have some amazing devices. But what does that look like now? What you're seeing in terms of the spatial web tools in gaming, and what does that look like long term?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good question to ask. I think you're seeing it now, actually. If you're like, Move AI is a great company to kind of bring up. You're seeing the value in gaming tool companies and technology companies. Before, there were really scrappy, small 3-person companies that were passionately building a tool to help development. Now you're seeing these companies really scale. You see that with, I'm blanking, I think it's Kaodine, this AI 3D modeling tool that can take a 2D drawing and build a model out of it, and you're seeing, and there's a few other companies doing similar things. And I think even Meta with PyTorch 3D experimenting with stuff like that too. But one thing that I think is going to be huge is not just tools that help bridge things like design, language, or just like, your core mechanics between different languages. I think cloud, everyone was making fun of cloud gaming a few years ago. I think cloud gaming is going to be huge. If you want to, especially with AR, like if you want to render like high fidelity assets, you're not going to have the hardware on a headset. You're just not. If we want to do ray tracing, that sort of thing, we're going to have to go to cloud. And I think, things like Starlink are going to be important. I think things like Google, everyone was clowning on Google Stadia, but I think Google Stadia is going to be important for this type of stuff. And I know there's other companies, other big tech companies working on really great streaming, kind of game streaming tech. That is going to be super important, I think, for AR. Because that's going to be kind of the glue that makes it a global thing. It's not something that needs, really great hardware, to be in a really new, modern, developed city. Hey, we can, scale it out that way. And I think, to Robert's point, I think that'll happen, probably here in other areas first. But as it scales and as the infrastructure gets better, I think that's going to be the real key to making it happen is going to be cloud rendering. So real-time cloud rendering. Yeah.
I mean, that's huge. I mean, we could have a whole conversation about that and go into the night, but Robert, why don't you talk about what you're talking in the chat? Basically, because this MetaHug is about equal opportunity. It's about giving the kid in Nigeria or Pakistan or India or Philippines equal opportunity. How do we give them the tools? And as we iterate, and since you're literally at the most groundbreaking, literally knowing before anyone what's going to happen, how do you then translate that to the rest of the world? You know?
Yeah, we're having a conversation in the chat about affordability of this device, right? Apple coming, and how can a Apple coming with a let's say the headset is $3,000.
Yeah.
How can they get mainstream? They're not. That's not the point of the first device.
Right.
The point of the first device is to sell the world on augmented reality. That's why it's going to have an impact, even if you're not building augmented reality things, because next Christmas, everybody's going to want one, talk about it, see it at a rich person's house, blah, blah, blah. It's going to dramatically change the marketplace.
Yeah. Exactly.
And the people who are building the pieces of the augmented reality glasses, they know that sometime soon it's going to be cheaper to make a pair of glasses than to make your phone. Okay. So by the end of the decade, we're going to see prices come down where everybody has to choose. Do you stick with the phone or do you go with glasses? The glasses are going to be far more capable than a phone. So we all know that inside the industry, by the end of the decade, we're answering a lot of the affordability problems, and we're moving from something that's going to be seen as maybe a rich person's toy to something that everybody in the world is going to have and use. Apple will wake up the world. Everybody will know what augmented reality is in the world next year.
Yes. And Natalia, let's talk about DressX, because AR is at the heart of DressX, and you being able to overlay someone dressing. So maybe they aspire to be, able to wear the Louis Vuitton, right? But they can't. So now maybe they're in the Philippines and they're just working towards, maybe they're a college student, right? But you're aspiring to be more. Tell us about your AR experience and what you're doing.
With AR it's something that is kind of bridging this gap between physical and digital. I usually ask people when I speak for the audience to raise their hand if they have account in social media, and to raise their hand if they have the avatar in any of the metaverses or like games or like Web3 spaces. And of course, usually it's more people who have their account in social media than the avatars. And that's exactly why AR is so important. And video is playing a more important role for social media now, because it's driving more engagement. And that's like super important metric. And that's exactly how we can start wearing digital fashion already today. We don't have to wait until glasses will arrive. I tried a lot of like AR glasses and VR glasses, and honestly, for the average person, it's so much easier to experience digital worlds and digital fashion in particular through the flat screen for now. Through the computer and through the mobile. That's exactly why DressX provides this opportunity already today for everyone to understand and to realize that digital fashion is not tomorrow. This is happening today, and that every person in the world will have their wardrobe of digital clothing. We call it meta closet. And every brand in the world will start a line of digital fashion. And it's actually related not only to the fashion brand and to the clothing companies. Of course, for them, it's a natural development. However, sport leagues, they all have merch and swag and like merchandise. It doesn't have to be produced in a physical format. And yes, and the musicians, right? And all this like new category of like influencers, creators, they can create products, they can drive an economy, but in digital only format. And wearables is the very first kind of thing that people associate themselves with. If you get to the digital space, you don't buy a digital car first or like a digital house first. You have to represent yourself, and digital fashion exactly helps to represent a person in a digital format as well. So that's super exciting, and AR is extremely important because the barrier to start using AR is so much lower than the barrier to start using VR. That's why it has to be this bridge, and we're really excited about it.
Perfect. No, thank you so much. And Marco and Leanne, we're going to get to you next. Well, Polygon has so much to talk about gaming. I know, Marco, we'll leave that to another time. The next question, Marco, how do social impact projects that help the common man, similar to what we're doing MetaHug, basically giving equal opportunity to the world, attract funding through gaming the community? What have you seen in the space globally from your personal perspective? Funding, even in the downturn, it's a bear market. What does that funding look like? And have you seen any the community getting together around social impact projects?
Well, I seen some of them, and I can say that well, the gamification of the communities has several purposes, but the first one, of course, is based on the growth and of the engagement, of the participation, and so on. And so we are talking about people, numbers of people that can be measured in some way, and this is interesting for most of the companies around the world. The Web3 world is based, well, should be based, and it is based on principle of sovereign identity. And so every one of the participants should own their own data, share them as they like, and so on. But we have also something that can be tracked, and it is a permissionless way to tracking. And we are talking about aggregate data, because the aggregate data is something that will be found on the blockchain without having people to reveal their identity and so on. Aggregate data will never harm privacy, rights of individuals, and so on. So there are three possible ways, in my opinion, to attract fundings. First of all is social funds for education, for the growth of the territory, and so on. So we have companies that could be interested in interacting with the communities to get them know brands and so on, and or also to, because of those data that we spoke about, to know about those aggregate behaviors. And then there will be companies that will be interested on building on the community, so on the ecosystem that is built on this community. And all those three are ways to attract funds. And actually, there are many examples about it.
Oh, perfect. No, thank you, Marco, for that. I really appreciate that insight. Leanne, I know that your basically perspective from social impact, your story, you played the video. I mean, MetaHug is basically your story. And the common man, you helping kids from an early age all over the world, orphans. What basically brought you to this point through gamifying the community to helping that basically get to this point?
Yeah, I think I was just trying to solve my own problems, and being to teach my 8-year-old and my 4-year-old how to continue my journey where I went through, and I did it physically. How do we move forward in the metaverse, and for them to still do an act of kindness that really affected me, my DNA, and how it shaped who I am. So I'm always thinking, when they're always on their iPads and looking in clearly on Roblox, so that's the reason. It's just bridging, gamifying social impact in the game. And so, that layer in the game, after you learn everything, you have an opportunity in the game, in our game, to actually give back. And so just trying to solve my own problems and trying to gamify it to where, kids around the world have the same access, and we're providing them a platform to give back.
And that goes into the next question, basically. I think that just for our basically answer to the question for us, it's like Prasaga has been amazing support and funding this, and VPX Foundation, just a part of this in giving grants and donations to the community, us as a social impacts project. But for the social impacts projects out there listening, I think just being able to build a community that cares, doing things like this that we're doing today, being able to gamify the community to have something physical and non-physical. So having that connection point where you can have something meaningful in person, but also online. Even though we're focused online, we are going to be doing things in person, and like Move.ai will be able to capture that in person and then bring it online. So I think that that's just really finding meaningful things that are making the world different and a better place. So we're tackling free education for the world and gamifying it, making it fun, and killing two birds with one stone, basically entertainment and value for the kids. So I think just for those social impact projects out there, just make it a clear why people should care. But then going why people should care about the next question, in a nutshell, it's helping the developing countries have equal opportunity for those that can't read the small print. Basically, that having that, what is a DAO? Almost like a GoFundMe campaign, right? It's, you guys know the GoFundMe, crowdsourcing, crowdfunding. You have online, you have a lot of support around the world. You know, someone's dying of cancer, you're supporting them in different ways. What are different ways that you guys are seeing projects with that same thing in mind? What are you guys seeing out there that you see that DAOs can basically support that? Maybe Marco, let's go to you. Let's hear from your perspective.
Well, DAOs empower a lot of Web3 principles, and of course, going to the people that are now not reached by technology, by banks, and so on. So the ones that usually are indicated as unbanked is very important.
Yes.
So. And the idea is to be able to give them the opportunities that now they don't have. And that does give actually the opportunity to think, develop, implement new way of participation, a new way of organization, sharing, making decisions, aiming at decentralized and, as I was saying before, bottom-up way of building. Those can actually become the gateway for everyone, welcoming them, first of all, but then there is something that is very important. And when it is where I think the DAO will play a big role. So it is about education, because it's not just giving people a new tool to use. They must be educated to use them in the best way, to use them for them. And so because of this education, they will be able to empower themselves and become the engine of the change for themselves, for the others, for their communities, for the people that are, for their families, for their countries, and so on. They will be able to study the environment, a new environment that is growing. They will be able to identify the needs because of everything that they will be able to learn by the others. And when we talk about education in DAOs, we are not talking to a natural and normal and structured way of educating people as in schools or university and so on. We are talking about, well, of course, talking to people that maybe know something more than you, but most of it is educating themselves to be able to act, to think, and to do something because you identify needs. You are not there to comply to some orders that you are received, but you are there to be part of the solution. So the first part, the education, is stop thinking, well, someone will tell me what to do, but it is understanding finally what I can do for the others.
Oh, perfect. No, that's great. And I think that that's something that we're also working on in detail. And maybe Leanne, you can go over it, what you've seen kind of around the world. I mean, it's a very heartfelt, emotional stories as we touch kids all over the world. What's been your experiences now?
I guess, I'm sorry, the question is what influence?
So basically going over the opportunities in developing countries, harnessing the learning opportunities that we're able to, just teaching kids. So people from all over the world being able to learn our curriculum, whether it's in Roblox or just Web3, what is basically that representation that we've seen so far?
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's naturally with a DAO, it's empowering. It's, globally, for me, from my experience, I feel like the underdeveloped companies actually are more knowledgeable with Web3 versus right now for the people in the US. And that's just my perspective, but maybe that's the group I'm in with the parents. But I think
It's true.
yeah, I think it's naturally because it's easier to take crypto, and so they caught on earlier. Just actually seeing them helping us create Web3 education for the kids in the US has been a lot of fun watching. I think being able to help kids globally and also see them help our kids and educate our kids is quite fascinating. I think it's quite amazing. Like Harsh, showing us how to do Roblox coding, and then in a little bit we'll have Abdul teaching blockchain and Web3 101. But I think just being able to see globally outside just the US, and seeing them give back in a very same way we've been giving back to others, to watch them do it has been really heartfelt.
Yeah, and I think going alongside Robert's chat, basically talking about the kids all over the world. I mean, we have kids in the remote parts of the world in the dirt floor, being able to say, hey, I have to go in town to get an internet connection on my laptop, and then I'll help you, with the game and creating this game. We have kids all over the world creating our games and Roblox, right? And that's what's so cool, to be able to give the equal opportunity to then help, then bring it to life. Partner, with people like Apple to be able to give the devices, and we're not going to be able to give them, to everyone, but at least they can experience it. They can understand it from a different perspective, a different paradigm shift, to challenge their minds and their brains, to go beyond what they thought was possible. And I think that that's what's so cool about Web3 in the future of DAOs. You're challenging the status quo. And yes, they may be never able to afford that device, but they can experience it with our help and others, to be able to give it to them and then to show them a glimpse of what's possible. So I think that is something for us, what we're going into segueing in what MetaHug does, being able to, for brands experiencing, instead of an agency hiring adults to build it, whatever that experience is, to have the kids, a part of the MetaHug DAO, build it for them. I just talk about basically creators, Natalia, the young creators that you have, that you see developing this AR experiences, developing even in Roblox, what you guys are selling in the 3D clothing. Do you think that having more kids create for other kids what they want, do you think that that's a benefit?
Yes, 100%. But also, I believe that it doesn't have to be this kind of education or the structure when there is some guru is teaching and everyone else is just coming and listening. It's really about collaboration and game within this kind of building process, how people get together, how they get excited about something, and how they learn together from each other, teaching each other, rather than like having some kind of one room where everyone gets together and learning. It's about collaboration, and it's about building things together, and you learn by doing. And I believe this approach is something that is kind of more natural to this kind of new generation. Especially, honestly, yesterday I was so excited to talk to all these kids and like young people. I cannot call them kids. It's like young professionals, right? And that's really exciting. And I think this change is something that we maybe don't even like realize 100% how it's like happening, and maybe we don't have to like structure it much, but just to give a freedom to create. And
perfect. That's amazing. I mean, even talking about with Leanne, how she kind of came up with the model for Play to Learn and MetaHug at like the Montessori school or Acton, being able to be their own creator. It's like the kids in the school like run the school themselves. It's like the teachers aren't even teachers, they're just guides. And I think that that's the future of Web3 and teaching and education, is how do we paradigm shift from the old to the new. And Leanne, maybe Natalia, you just teed it up perfectly, verbatim what we're doing. Leanne, maybe you want to discuss that and what Natalia said, how everything has kind of come about.
Yeah, no, 100%. Collaboration is everything. I love working with young kids and young, yes, teens or young adults. I kind of group all of them as kids, but they're oh, sorry, they're brilliant. I love hearing the feedback. I love it when I think I come up with a great idea and then my daughter goes, terrible. And I'll just be like, well, what is it that you don't like about it? So honing in and listening to their feedback is important. My daughter goes to Acton Academy, which is student-led, just very similar to what Josh was saying, but basically there's no real teacher. You're not allowed to ask teachers for answers. There's a guide there that overlooks and makes sure we're on track. And they have, it's a very co-working kind of space. They have projects, they collaborate, they figure it out, how many badges they have to get. And they know that they need to have X amount of badges by the end of the year. They break it up, they work backwards. And so I took a lot of that. And, I grew up early on in Montessori, so understood that philosophy. But even in our gaming now, it's very self-led, student-led. They get to pick whatever subjects they want to learn, because I'm a big believer you only learn when you really want to learn. So they get to literally choose if they want to learn about biohacking, we have it there. If they want to learn about mindfulness, it's there too. But they get to choose, and in this case, it's also led by them. So there's not a teacher that's teaching anything, and they're basically in the game and they're just interacting. It's engagement. But a lot of that was bridged from my experience with my kids and growing up from school, what worked for us, and trying to just reinventing and reimagining how education should be.
Right. No, thank you. And then going back to that, the question talking about brands, how do you help create and leverage in the future? Even brands like Pepsi, for example, is going and building their own metaverse in their own community. How do they, in the future, how do they leverage young creators? So do they make a DAO, put $1 million in it, and then for influencers, then create that ecosystem, et cetera? I think that's going to be the future of what that looks like. And it's going to be cool to see how it unfolds. Unfortunately, we're getting to the end. Probably have about 5 minutes left. We can go a little over. But I just wanted to talk about talking about interoperability. I think, Robert, you and your understanding of the spatial web, I would love to get your perspective on what you think about interoperability in the game engines, and then Emmanuel talk about that at the end, just talking about what that looks like. And I know Polygon's talking about, with a few of them. Just Marco, I know you probably don't want to maybe comment, but just talking about the interoperability of Polygon being at the heart of that interoperability too in the future between brands.
Also, if you follow the AI community, they are moving fast into neural radiance fields, which is a photorealistic 3D environment that is built by an AI computer from 2D photos or 2D video. So you start with an iPhone, take a picture of a tree, and now you have a 3D scene, right?
Wow.
And that's going to be brought to the world first by Apple next year, but others, many others. The whole community. Autonomous cars are going to NERFs. If you read or if you watch the video by Ashok, who runs Tesla's AI group, he talks about neural radiance fields, right? Virtual beings that are soon going to change this industry coming next year, they run on neural radiance fields. And all of the interesting things. So we're about to head into a photorealistic 3D world. And that's what's going to get the normal everyday consumer excited. So there's a lot of opportunity coming to this community.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much, Robert. Emmanuel, talk about, from your perspective, the game engine side. We talked about AI being able to help that baseline of understanding an asset between game engines. what that looks like between Roblox and Epic Games to, do whatever. So what does that look like from your perspective as a AAA artist?
Yeah, so I think that's like a very difficult problem to solve, but I think a very important one. Because I mean, I ultimately, and this is just me, and this could be total bias, I ultimately think Unreal is going to be just the standard 3D rendering package in the future. But I think, to like kind of,
Developers taught me otherwise, by the way.
Well, I mean, being a developer that's worked in Unreal for 8+ years, I very confidently am saying that I think
Unity has
Unreal
been working on neural radiance fields for 3 years, and they haven't shipped the product. They have some major things coming out next year.
Yeah, to me, the reason, and not to debate on this, but the reason I'm very confident in Unreal, there's a lot that they're doing under the hood that isn't. I mean, just Nanite alone last year was very impressive tech that Unity hasn't done, but they have so many AAA teams developing Unreal right now, building tools in AAA production pipelines. So that's the value. That's where I think Unreal has an advantage. Is you have teams like Crystal Dynamics working on awesome games in their engine, and multiple hundreds of teams like that with thousands of experienced devs that are building new tools that they're always adding, and they're not spending a penny for that. But the really difficult so the difficult problem is kind of how do we communicate between Unreal and Unity? So I think Unity Unreal will be competing for the most, and I think, I mean, I guess it is a bit rash to say that Unreal will be the main one. That's definitely very biased, but I think
it doesn't really matter, by the way, because architecturally you can do that up in the cloud, right?
Yeah.
Barjo is a VR headset company, but now they're making a cloud-based Unreal Engine system for developers where you do all the hard work on the cloud and shove it down to your phone or your glasses.
Yeah, and that stuff and that stuff's all awesome. And I think the big problem is you have these big AAA companies that have their own engines. Look at Frostbite and I don't know what 343s is, and then you have Unity, and then you have Unreal. And it's like we can transfer like 3D asset easily. We have like USD file format Pixar developed, which is like a really easy way to send information between models and rigs and that sort of thing.
By the way, NVIDIA just a couple of weeks ago blessed that format publicly, and that's the format of the metaverse of their 3D strategy.
Yeah, USD is awesome. And it's like, but now the next step to USD is logic. How do we transfer game logic from Unreal to Unity, or from a proprietary engine to Unreal or to Unity? And that's where, because everyone is going to kind of pick their favorite tool to work with. And then these big companies are going to try to stick proprietary as long as they can. And it's like, well, then, that's the really tough problem, is who builds the USD for game logic. And that I think requires AI tools that convert logic from different programming languages or no code tools. Essentially, we're all doing the same thing, just in different languages. It's like, how do we take that, and transfer it over, and I think once that's solved, we're going to see, once that's solved, that's going to be huge for the industry, and especially for like AR and the metaverse and that sort of thing. That's going to be, and I think that's on the horizon. I think a lot of people are probably thinking about solving that right now.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to the second to last question, is like having for a brand like a dashboard, like a Hootsuite or a Salesforce, just like kind of a plug and play for brands in the metaverse spatial web, right? Between those game engines. And we talk about this a lot, the interoperability of those templates, right? The template models and what that looks like to scale. But having for brands, like, hey, it's almost like going on, let me post to Twitter or Facebook, right? It's like, how do you have a Hootsuite for the metaverse? Like where you're literally plugging and playing, and that interoperability is just with one click, you can have that and it just goes. So I think that's what's exciting to me, to be able to see in the future, how do we scale this and what that looks like. And I know, Marco, I know that this is not your department, but I know Polygon Sandeep has talked a lot about like the future of what that looks like and all the brands you're working with and interoperability. Did you want to say anything about that?
Well, I would say that we have another principle, not just interoperability, that is fundamental, but also composability. Web3 is based on composability. And when we talk about the dashboard, well, we should talk about a possible open framework where many modules that are interoperable, that are partly permissioned, and that are composable, can actually interact one to each other. And instead of having just one dashboard for everyone, well, you will have a dashboard for every single one of the users. They will be able, in this way, from at least my point of view, well, it will empower more devs to work. It will give the chance to many small devs, companies and projects to build more, because each one of them will address one use case that will come from the communities. Because there will be, if we can open the market, there will be so many use cases for each one that is participating, and there will be a multiple use case that can be addressed by developers.
Perfect. I mean, I love that. And how do you see the wallet correlating to the dashboard? And we call it ownification, owning your own data. So basically gamifying the gamification of owning your own journey, owning your own data, owning whatever you're doing in your own world. How do you see that correlating?
Well, if we think about a wallet, at the end is just a way to identify the people, and it is not working very well at the end, because even if we're talking about an address and so on, it is not giving enough power, enough way to empower things. And a wallet is missing one very important part, that is a reputation. Even if we think about NFTs, a reputation, everything is always visible, and a reputation in part should be at least anonymous. So something that can be verified, maybe with a zero knowledge way, to know that I am allowed to do something. So a wallet for me is just one step. Of course, people will have to handle things in some way, where they have to hold and own things in some way, but I can see a future where everyone will always be showing whatever they have when whatever they are, because this is not how reality works. Reality works in a place where even if everything could be in some sort of visible and traced, when you cannot live without thinking that your pseudo anonymity will always protect you.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Marco. I appreciate it. Unfortunately, we have to cut this short. Thank you guys so much for the insightful knowledge that you've spread and shared. Thank you so much, guys. Emmanuel, thank you, Marco. Thank you, Natalia, Robert, Leanne. Thank you for your time and effort. We have so much to share. We're going to talk, transitioning from the wallet now to talking about blockchain. Abdullah is now going to talk about that in our discussions. It's a beginner's course for everyone, Blockchain 101. So listen up, the kids, this will be for you and any basically beginners for blockchain. Thank you guys so much, everyone on the panel. We're going to come to an end, and we'll have this recording for the future. Thank you guys again so much.